Hi, welcome to my latest video. Today I'm going to be showing you my new catch can bracket, this one down here, and I'm also going to show you a bracket that I designed for automatic gearbox Freelander 2s that have a transmission fluid oil cooler mounted down here. Why have I redesigned this bracket? Well, those of you who watched the earlier video, the one where I did this induction kit, air intake duct, will have seen me 3D print and cast a bracket, 3D print an item and then make a mould and then cast a replica in hard polyurethane. Well, unfortunately, the bracket just wasn't substantial enough, it wasn't thick enough or strong enough, and also the polyurethane that I used couldn't take a very high temperature. I think it softened at around 70 degrees. So what happened was a few people who were running that type of bracket, including myself, found that during the hot summer months the bracket started to warp and buckle. Here's a quick photo of one that was fitted to one of the Facebook Freelander 2 group members in Germany. As you can see, his bracket has completely bent to the point where it was unusable. So what I did is went back to the drawing board, designed a much thicker bracket with smaller holes on it, and then a much more substantial piece here that goes across to the bodywork with 3 big long M6 bolts through it. I also bolted the catch can directly to the bracket, did away with the small bracket that comes with the catch can. So what we'll do now is have a look at the 3D design on the computer, the 3D printer design drawings that I've created, and I'll show you what I did to make this new bracket. We'll also look at the bracket that I developed for the automatic gearbox cars. So let's have a quick look now at the 3D design. So this is the shape of the object that I'm going to be 3D printing. This is Tinkercad, which allows me to actually design the item. So this is similar to the old bracket, but the thickness has been increased from 10 to 13 millimeters, and then this piece here has been redesigned to have 3 bolts instead of 2, so that piece there fits into this sort of cutout here. If we put that into Cura, which is the slicing application, it gives you a bit of a better picture of what it'll look like in real life. Here we go. So this is the software that actually generates the G-code file for the 3D printer, and it allows us to actually see the object as it will be when printed out. So this is the bracket that I'm going to be fitting to my car. This is for manual gearbox. So we've got the main piece here with this curve here, which will take the lower part of the can, and then we've got this bracket piece here which bolts onto there and sticks out. The reason why I'm not casting all of this in one piece, or not printing it all in one piece, is because when I want to cast it into polyurethane, I am going to end up with a sort of piece that's submerged deep down in the mould if I don't make that bracket as a separate item. So all will become clear when I make the silicone mould for this. This little piece here, which I'll try and zoom in on, that little sort of rectangular platform there, these 2 M5 holes are the ones that actually screw into the top of the can. So those will allow the can to bolt directly to the bracket instead of using the small sort of a C-shaped bracket that comes with the can. That bracket won't be used, it'll be discarded. Okay, so here's the bracket that I'm going to print for the manual gearbox. Let's have a quick look now at the bracket that we need for the automatic gearbox. Here it is. Very, very similar. Very similar in the way it looks. You've got a main piece here. You've got this piece here, which will bolt onto here with the 3 long M6 bolts. A couple of differences. First of all, you'll see this spacer piece. That is to move the whole bracket slightly rearward, slightly towards the rear of the car. Step it out from the radiator slightly. The reason why we need that piece here to act as a spacer underneath here is because the oil cooler, which sits down here, has a hose that kind of goes up in this area here. If the bracket sits fully back against the radiator like the manual gearbox bracket does, then it won't clear that hose. There's also a chunk out of here, so there's a sort of a rectangular piece which is missing from that corner. So if I put that into Cura now, it makes a lot more sense. So we can now see what that will look like. There we go. So very similar. The rectangular platform here is slightly reduced. The can will actually sit closer to the bracket. So the actual position of the can in the engine bay is very, very similar to the manual gearbox. But the bracket itself has been moved closer to the can. So this distance here is a lot shallower. That bracket there will fit there, but you'll notice that the height of this, the height of the curved piece there, if we compare that against the height here for the manual gearbox, much higher. Okay, so the distance, the thickness there, the distance from the can to the bracket is greater on the manual gearbox. So on the automatic gearbox, oops, we can see we've got this sort of half a semicircular, well, quarter of a sort of circular can support there, and this piece here is the cutout that I'm talking about to clear the hose. Okay, that loop there, that ring there that you can see there is really just to locate into that hole, and that just stops this top piece from rotating or moving about as we're trying to bolt it in. One other thing that I've done on these brackets, both of these brackets, which I didn't do on the previous one, is the mounting holes. The mounting holes there and there, so there and up the top, are now elongated, so they're slightly sort of oval shaped. That is really just to give a little bit of movement to the bracket. Every car is slightly different. I printed off the first prototype for the automatic gearbox bracket, the one with the oil cooler cutout, sent it to 2 different people. One fitted, one didn't. On the second guy, the bolts just wouldn't line up properly, so his car was obviously slightly different. So I thought by making these slightly elongated, then it just allows for a little bit of wiggle room to get those brackets sort of located in. So the next thing to do is to 3D print these out and make silicone molds and then pour the polyurethane. Now, this video will show the casting and the mould making for this bracket, okay, which is the automatic gearbox bracket. The manual gearbox bracket I won't show, but it's very, very similar. And then right at the end, I'll show you the fitment of the manual gearbox bracket to my car, and hopefully put some pictures up of the automatic gearbox bracket, this one fitted to a Freelander 2 with the automatic gearbox. Okay, right, let's get printing. So what I've done here is to glue the 3D printed parts into this plastic box. So they are just glued in there with some super glue. Press those hard down so there's no gaps underneath them. And now what I'm going to do is mix up. So this silicone, it's just general purpose moulding silicone rubber. It's mixed 10 parts to 1 part with this sort of activator here. So I've got my mixing sticks and mixing pots and the scales, and I shall weigh out the right quantities and pour lots of silicone over all of this up to a depth of about, probably going to be about 30 millimeters deep, so it just covers that little bit there. That's the highest point. It will use quite a lot of silicone, so I'll have to mix up probably about 3 or 4 potfuls and pour that in and let that set overnight. And then tomorrow morning I'll carefully pull out the mould, pull out the cured silicone mould from the box, leaving these yellow pieces behind, and that should then give us the correct mould to cast exact copies of these out of hard, rigid black polyurethane, which will be able to withstand the higher temperatures under the bonnet. Right, I'm going to get mixing and get pouring, and we'll see what we end up with. Okay, that's the 3D printed parts fully submerged in silicone. I'm now going to leave this overnight to cure, and then we'll have a look in the morning and see what the mould looks like. Okay, after a bit of wrestling and a lot of swearing, I managed to get this out of the clear plastic box. 2 of the pieces stayed behind, stuck to the bottom of the box, and this bigger piece is still embedded in the mould. So what I need to do is very carefully cut all these bits all the way around, pull that out, and hopefully it should be like this, an exact copy of the piece that was moulded. Right, that all looks good, just needs a bit of tidying up. Get some of these bits off, and then we're ready to pour. Okay, so here's the mould. I've tidied it up, removed all the little whiskery bits of silicone that were around the edges. This is now nice and neat. And what I'm going to do now is mix up some of this, which is a polyurethane casting resin. It sets into a hard, rigid plastic. It's not a rubber polyurethane like I use for my lift spacers. This is a sort of a rigid black plastic. Well, it's rigid plastic, and then I'm adding this, which is a black pigment to colour it. It's mixed in a 1:1 ratio, 5% black pigment. So I need to weigh out an amount. Not sure exactly how much I'm going to need, but I think we'll probably do about, oh, I don't know, about 150 grams of each, I think, with about 15 grams of black pigment there. So that will work out at 5% colour pigment proportion. Okay, right, and get this mixed up and poured in. Now, one thing with this stuff is it does set pretty quickly. The pot life is only about 3 to 4 minutes. So you mix it, so you mix part A, or no, sorry, it's part B. You mix part B with the colour first, so weigh out part B, mix the colour in, and then pour in part A. As soon as that is poured in, as soon as you mix it in, it will start to set, and it stays very liquid for about 3 minutes, and then if you don't pour it quickly enough, it just sets very, very quickly after about 3 minutes. So you have to act quickly and pour as fast as possible without overflowing and making a mess. So it's a little bit tricky to do, but I shall try and film it whilst I do it. Okay.
Like you always do.
Okay, so managed to pour all 3 pieces. That was 120 grams of each polyurethane part, and there's quite a lot left in the pot actually. 80 to 100 grams. Well, let's weigh it and see. We can actually find out how much we've got. Okay, so 80 grams exactly left in the pot, so 40 grams of each, not counting the gram or two of colour. So that was 12 grams of pigment, 120 grams of each part. So that is now going to sit and cure. Couple of minutes really, and that will be rigid, but I'm not going to demold it for a couple of hours. Okay, so might even leave it until the next morning just to let it go really solid. Okay, right, so here we can see next morning the polyurethane is cured. That is now nice and hard and rigid. So what I need to do now is carefully prise these pieces out of the mould, taking care not to break off any of these delicate pieces of silicone. There we go, there we go. So we've got a perfect copy, an exact replica of the 3D print, and that is really strong, and will also take a much higher temperature. So the catch can will bolt into here, sit there, there's the cutout for the oil cooler, and we've got these slightly elongated holes here and here to allow for a little bit of movement. Every car's slightly different, so that just allows for the bolts to line up. Right, let's carefully remove these pieces. Get this out of here without damaging the mould. Come on. There we go. Right, there's that piece. So that goes there. There's a couple of long 50mm long bolts, M6 bolts through these 3 holes. And finally we've got our spacer piece, which is needed for the clearance of the oil cooler. So this just offsets the entire bracket very slightly. Well, 13mm I think it is, so that will go there. That's just a spacer piece just to move the whole bracket slightly rearward. A longer bolt through there, as you can see there. So, right, that's it. Now we need to get the catch can on and fit that onto car with an automatic gearbox. I don't have one, my gearbox is manual, so I will send this to somebody that does have a automatic gearbox and get them to fit it and send me a photo, and I'll put that up at the end of this video. Right, I'm going to go and get the catch can now and just show you how that fits onto the bracket. Let's move that out of the way. Okay, so this is a black catch can, also available in bare silver, chrome, sort of bare aluminium. You can get them in blue. The blue ones are getting a little bit rare. I don't seem to be able to get hold of those at the moment, and I've also seen them in red and purple as well. So it's just aluminium, and then they either paint it or anodize it depending on what colour they want it to be. So that will bolt straight on there. The bracket that fits down here that comes with the can is not used. Okay, the can bolts straight into there. Now you'll notice that there's this gap here, whereas the brackets for the manual gearbox sit a bit lower, the can had to be moved up slightly to clear the hose that is here for the oil cooler that sits here. So that's why the whole thing's moved up slightly, and it also allows a little bit of support when you're unscrewing the can as well to empty it out. Okay, so let's just place that. Oh, I'm not going to be able to do this, am I? Put that in position like that. That there. And then that will go there. So that's what it will look like. The whole thing will be tipped upward like that, mounted behind the near side headlight. So here we can see the new bracket bolted in. So we've got this M6 bolt here that goes into the bodywork. There's the oil catch can bolted directly to the bracket with a couple of M5 bolts through from the other side, and then we've got those 3 long M6 bolts there. Now the nuts on the other side are actually helping to stabilize the bracket and sort of basically sort of leaning against the this bit of bodywork here and just preventing the bracket from kind of twisting. This bracket's obviously a lot thicker and stronger, so despite the heat of the engine bay and these hoses trying to kind of turn it to the side, that is all in position and looking good. That bracket has been fitted now for about 2 months now, through some very hot weather. We had here in the south of the UK, in it was beginning of August to end of July, we had about 36 degrees C, and I've done a couple of long journeys as well, so the underbonnet temperature would have been pretty warm in both of those. Sitting in traffic on the A303 going down to Devon at Stonehenge, and so far no sign of warping, no sign of the bracket bending, which is really good. Okay, well, I hope that video was useful. If you'd like to buy one of these brackets with or without a catch can, then visit my website fl2lift.com. I will also hopefully soon be buying the parts for this kit and this induction kit here, and selling those as a sort of a ready-made kit with these hoses, the smaller hoses and the can and the bracket and everything you need to replicate what I've done here. These can and bracket are available at the moment. These parts are not available yet, but hopefully middle of October to the end of October I should be putting up a few of those kits. We'll see. If they sell, then I'll get more. If they don't, I won't, but we'll see. I've had a lot of interest. In both this ducting and the catch can, and yeah, a few people have actually fitted their own equivalents, and they concur that the car feels more responsive and seems to just perform a bit better. Okay, right, good. Hope that was useful. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much. Goodbye.